She turned back, just once, and in that single moment, every lie I told myself about moving on shattered. Her eyes met mine, and suddenly the world felt too quiet, too fragile, too small for all the things we never said. It wasn't love that hurt the most. It was the memory of being seen by her, completely, like no one else ever could. When she looked back, I forgot how to breathe. The rain had just stopped when I saw her again. The city smelled like wet asphalt, and memories I thought I'd buried years ago. Neon lights shimmered in puddles, painting her reflection in fragments of gold and blue. She stood across the street, her hair a little shorter, her smile still half sunlight, half storm. I froze where I was, hands trembling around the cup of coffee I had no intention of drinking. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, what I would say, how I would smile. But now that she was real, standing just a few steps away, every version of that fantasy vanished. She turned toward the corner cafe, the one that used to be ours. My chest tightened. I remembered her sitting there on rainy days, sketching clouds on napkins, calling it her therapy. I remembered how she'd take my hand under the table, her thumb drawing tiny circles on my skin, as if that could erase the world outside. I wanted to call her name, but the sound got trapped somewhere between my ribs in regret. When she opened the door and disappeared inside, I stood in the drizzle, staring at the flickering cafe sign, open until midnight. The same words from 3 years ago, the night she told me she was leaving. I told her I'd wait. She smiled like she already knew I would. Now, looking at her through glass and rain, I realized I still was. Sometimes the hardest part of seeing someone again isn't what they say. It's realizing how easily they learn to live without you. I sat at the far corner of the cafe, pretending to read a menu I couldn't see. The air smelled of roasted beans and soft jazz, exactly like it used to. She was there, just a few tables away, her head tilted slightly as she looked out the window. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, tracing patterns down the glass like the tears I refused to let fall. She looked peaceful, maybe even happy, and that somehow hurt more than anything else ever had. Her fingers tapped lightly against her cup, the same rhythm she used when she was nervous. I used to tease her for it. Now it just felt like a secret I had no right to remember. A part of me wanted to walk up, to say something simple like, "You still take your coffee too sweet," but another part, the broken, quieter part, knew that some distances can't be crossed with words. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and chose not to. That uncertainty was its own kind of pain, sharp, quiet, and endless. I could have left. I should have. But my body stayed rooted, as if the ground itself refused to let me move. I kept telling myself I'd go once she stood up, once she left. But when she finally rose from her seat, I looked away too late. Our eyes met through the reflection in the glass. Brief, fragile, but real. She froze for a heartbeat, her lips parting like she might speak. Then she smiled, soft, polite, distant. The kind of smile you give a stranger you almost recognize. And just like that, she was gone again. The bell above the cafe door chimed as she left, and the sound felt like the end of a song I was ready to stop listening to. I sat there long after she disappeared, staring at the empty chair she'd left behind, wondering if ghosts could drink coffee, and realizing that maybe I'd been one all along. Memories don't fade. They wait quietly, patiently, for the moment you're too tired to keep them buried. That night, I couldn't escape her face. Every time I blinked, she was there, standing under the same rain that once soaked us both. Her laughter spilling into the night like it belonged there. I lay awake, the hum of the city outside my window, thinking about the girl I once knew and the woman she had become. Time had changed everything around us, but not the way my heart reacted when it remembered her. I met her in the middle of a thunderstorm. We were 15, huddled beneath the roof of an empty bus stop. She was drenched, shivering, but her eyes were full of something wild, like she'd rather drown in the rain than run from it. She offered me half her umbrella, even though it was broken. I remember how her hand brushed mine when she smiled and said, "Guess we'll both get soaked anyway." I didn't know it then, but that was the moment everything began. We became inseparable after that. She'd sneak out to meet me after class, and we'd sit by the old bridge, watching trains rush by. She said she liked the sound, that it reminded her of how fast the world could move when you weren't tea ready. I used to write poems about her, little fragments of stolen moments, her hair in the wind, the way she'd hum when she was nervous, how she always looked like she was about to run but never did. But love isn't easy when it's forbidden. Her parents didn't understand, and mine pretended not to see. She used to joke that we were temporary, like a song you replay until it starts to hurt. I told her that nothing about her could ever be temporary. She laughed at that, not because she didn't believe me, but because she did. One evening, she stopped showing up. I waited at our bridge for hours until the sky went dark. When she finally came, her eyes were swollen, her hands trembling. She said she had to leave, that staying would destroy her. I told her I'd wait. She didn't say goodbye, just leaned in, pressed her forehead against mine, and whispered, "Don't." The next morning, she was gone. No. Years later, I was the one sitting in silence, staring at the same rain, still waiting, even though she'd never asked me to. Some people don't return to you. They return to the same city, the same streets, the same air. And that's somehow worse, because it makes hope feel alive again. The next morning, I found myself standing in front of that cafe once more, pretending I was there by accident. But I wasn't fooling anyone, not even myself. The truth was simple. I wanted to see her again. Not to talk, not to ask why she left, but just to know that she was still real, that I hadn't imagined the entire thing. The sky was pale, the kind of gray that swallows color. I ordered a black coffee. She used to tease me for that, said it tasted like regret. Maybe she was right. I sat near the window, tracing the rim of the cup with my finger, watching people rush by outside. I almost missed her when she walked in. Almost. She looked tired, not physically, but in the way people look when they've been running from something they can name. Our eyes scanned the room, and for a second I thought she'd seen me. Then she turned toward the counter, her voice soft as she ordered the same drink she always did, caramel latte with extra foam. My chest tightened. Some things never change, even when people do. When she sat down, I caught her reflection in the glass again. This time she noticed me. There was no mistaking it. The quick intake of breath, the slight parting of her lips. We stared at each other through the distance of 2 tables and 3 years. The noise of the cafe faded until it was just us, caught in a silence heavy with everything we'd never said. She smiled first, hesitant, uncertain. I managed one in return. That small gesture, so simple, broke something open in me. It wasn't the reunion I dreamed of. No tears, no apologies. Just the quiet acknowledgement that we were still here, still breathing in the same moment. After a few seconds, she stood and walked over. My heart stumbled inside my chest. She stopped at my table, eyes softer than I remembered, and said, "You still drink it black." Her voice hadn't changed, still warm, still home. I tried to respond, but all I managed was a quiet laugh. Talked about nothing. Really, work, weather, books. The kind of safe topics people use when they're terrified of saying what they mean. She told me she was back for a few weeks. I didn't ask why. I didn't want to know if she'd be leaving again. When she got up to leave, she hesitated for a moment, then said, "It's good to see you." And before I could reply, she was gone again, just like before. But this time, she left her sketchbook behind. Sometimes the things people leave behind speak louder than the words they never said. The sketchbook sat on the table long after she left, untouched, the edges slightly worn, and the cover stained with faint rings of coffee. I stared at it, unsure whether I had the right to open it. My fingers hovered over the cover, trembling, part of me terrified of what I might find, part of me terrified that I'd find nothing at all. But curiosity is cruel when mixed with love. It always wins. The first page was blank, so was the second. But on the third, there it was, a familiar bridge, drawn in soft pencil strokes, the one where we used to meet after school. Her attention to detail hadn't changed. Even the chipped railing was there. Beneath it, written in small, careful letters, were the words, "I wonder if she ever waited." My chest tightened. I flipped through more pages, sketches of coffee cups, city lights, umbrellas caught in the wind. But then I found one that made my hands shake. Or rather, it was her memory of me, sitting on a park bench. Staring at the rain, that same quiet sadness in my eyes that she once said made me look like a poem she couldn't finish. Every drawing was a confession, each one whispering things she never said out loud. Notes filled the margins, little thoughts like she hated sugar, but loved sweetness. And if I ever go back, I hope she's still there. I could barely breathe. Toward the end of the book, there was one final sketch. It was of the cafe, tonight's cafe, with two empty chairs facing each other by the window. Underneath, in her handwriting, it said, "If you find this, I'll be at the bridge. One last time." For a moment, I just stared at the page, the sound of my heartbeat echoing in my ears. Then I grabbed my coat and ran. Out into the night, past the lights, through the drizzle that had started again like the sky itself wanted to relive our story. My shoes splashed through puddles, my lungs burning, but I didn't stop. When I reached the bridge, it was almost midnight. The air smelled like wet wood and memories. And there she was, standing exactly where she had 3 years ago, her hands resting on the railing, eyes closed as if listening to the past. I stopped a few steps away, afraid that if I moved closer, she might disappear. She turned. And this time, I didn't forget to breathe. I just didn't know how to. There are moments when silence speaks louder than a lifetime of words, and all you can do is stand there, hoping the other person still understands your kind of quiet. She looked the same and completely different all at once. The streetlight behind her threw a soft halo around her hair, and the mist rising from the river made her look almost unreal, like a memory pretending to be human. For a long while, neither of us said anything. The world around us felt suspended, like time had paused just to see what we'd do next. "I didn't think you'd come," she said finally, her voice fragile, barely audible over the sound of the water. "I almost didn't," I replied. "I wasn't sure if I should." She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried years of exhaustion. "I left the book on purpose," she admitted. "I hoped you'd find it." Something inside me cracked. The part that had believed she'd forgotten moved on, erased me. I wanted to be angry, to tell her how long I'd waited, how every day without her felt like a slow drowning. But when I saw the way her hands trembled as she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, all that anger turned to ache. "Why did you leave?" I asked softly. "You never told me. You just disappeared." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. "Because I was scared," she said, "of being seen, what it meant. You were brave enough to stay." "I wasn't," she laughed, but it sounded more like breaking. "I thought leaving would make it easier for you. I thought you'd forget me faster." "I tried," I whispered. "God, I tried." The wind picked up, carrying the faint smell of rain and river moss. She stepped closer, close enough that I could see the way her lashes quivered. "I never stopped thinking about you," she said. "Every city, every night, I saw you somewhere in someone's laugh, in a stranger's walk, in the way the rain sounded against the window." Her words hit me like a confession and a wound all at once. I wanted to reach for her, to pull her close and erase the years between us. But part of me was still afraid that if I touched her, she'd fade again. "Can't just come back and expect everything to be the same," I said, though my voice shook more than I wanted it to. "I don't," she replied. "I just wanted you to know that I never stopped loving you." The bridge went silent. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, soft and low, like the sky itself was listening. And before I could think, before fear could build its walls again, I took the step that closed the distance between us. Love doesn't always ask for forgiveness. Sometimes it just asks to be seen one last time, in the same light where it first began. The space between us vanished, like it had been waiting years to disappear. One step, then another, until the distance was gone and I could finally feel the warmth of her breath mixing with mine. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The rain began to fall again, soft at first, then heavier, washing the world in silver light. Her hair clung to her face, and I reached out without thinking, tucking it gently behind her ear. The same small gesture I used to do 1,000 times before. She looked up at me, eyes shimmering with everything we'd lost and everything we still were. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for leaving, for not being brave, for making you wait." I shook my head, tears burning my throat. "You don't get to apologize for being human." The words trembled out of me, unsteady but true. I could see the weight of them sinking into her, softening her expression. For a long, fragile moment, just stood there. Two people who had broken each other and somehow still found their way back to the same place. She reached for my hand, and when her fingers touched mine, it felt like time gave in. Every heartbeat between us seemed to find its rhythm again, as the city around us blurred, just light, sound, and rain. I closed my eyes as she leaned closer, her forehead resting against mine. "I missed you," she said, voice trembling. "I know," I whispered back. "I missed you too. No fireworks, no grand gestures. Just two people standing on a bridge in the rain, breathing in sync like they finally remembered how." She laughed softly through her tears, and it sounded like home. We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. The silence between us was enough. Full, forgiving, infinite. When she finally stepped back, she smiled in that same crooked way that had undone me years ago. "You're still my favorite mistake," she said quietly. "And you're still the reason I learned to stay," I replied. For the first time in years, the ache in my chest felt bearable. Not because it was gone, but because it finally had a name. Endings don't always happen when people walk away. Sometimes they happen when you finally stop waiting for them to turn back. The rain had stopped again. The night was quiet, filled only with the sound of the river moving below us, gentle and endless. She was still standing there, a few steps away now, looking out into the darkness, as if it could give her answers. I wanted to memorize everything, the way the lamplight touched her skin, the way her shoulders rose and fell with every breath. I knew I would replay this moment 1,000 times, the way I'd replayed every one before it. She turned to me, eyes soft but steady. "I'm leaving tomorrow," she said. Her voice didn't tremble this time, was calm, almost peaceful. I nodded. I didn't ask where. I didn't need to. Some things aren't meant to be held forever. They're meant to be remembered gently, like a song you hum when you can't sleep. "I'm glad you came," I said, my words slow, careful. "Even if it's just for this." She smiled, and it reached her eyes this time. Me too. For a while, neither of us spoke. We just stood there, side by side, watching the city lights flicker across the water. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It felt like closure, not the kind that erases, but the kind that forgives. She took a small step back, as if testing the space between us again. Then another. I watched her move toward the other side of the bridge, her footsteps soft against the wet pavement. The distance grew, but I didn't follow. I just stood there, letting her go, letting myself breathe, and then she did it. She turned back just once. Her eyes met mine across the distance, and the world fell silent all over again. But this time, I didn't forget how to breathe. This time, I smiled. Because I finally understood love isn't about holding on. It's about being grateful that it ever existed at all. She turned away, disappearing into the night, her silhouette fading into the city's soft glow. I stayed there until the lights blurred and the air grew cold, my heart no longer heavy, just full. When she looked back, I remembered everything. When she walked away, I finally let it go. And for the first time in years, I exhaled, slow, steady, alive.